Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. City and Liverpool squared off in the Community Shield, with Liverpool coming out 3-1 victors. But despite the scoreline, City did look dangerous throughout the match, and in fact, they had more expected goals than Liverpool. And we also got to see some brand new tactics from Pep that we will be discussing in this analysis. This is a part 2, and we released a video looking at Liverpool's tactics yesterday, so check that out as well. But let's dig into City's tactics. So as a reminder, both teams lined up with what was on paper 4-3-3s. And you can see despite it not being a league game, they both had close enough to their strongest lineups out, with new boy Haaland starting for City, whilst Liverpool were missing Alisson. And if you want formations like this during the match, as well as stats and all that other fun stuff, check out our video sponsor OneFootball, whose app you can get for absolutely free through the link in the description below. But City were just as competitive in this match, so what did they do when they had the ball? From goal kicks, City found success similarly to Liverpool. This involved splitting both their centre-backs, allowing their wing-backs to move much higher up. At the same time, Liverpool were looking to press fairly narrow with their front three, becoming man-to-man against the City build-up three. Their midfield three would also look to back up the press, making it difficult for City to play through the centre. But with Grealish staying high, as well as Mahrez, the Liverpool fullbacks couldn't join in the press. So we could see Ederson look to unleash Walker or Cancelo with a pass. So just a quick note, this is where personnel comes in. As we could see, for Liverpool with Alisson not playing, their Van Dijk was their playmaker during the build-up phase, so their goal was to filter the ball towards him and then he would do the press-breaking passes or look for switches. On the other hand, Ederson is excellent with the ball, so he had the responsibility of looking for the fullbacks or at times penetrative passes through the midfield. In the build-up, this was a situation we saw quite a lot of, with the centre-backs splitting wide either side of Ederson. In the same instance, Liverpool were defending with a narrow front three, looking to prevent entry into the midfield, and although Henderson is pressing in this situation, either way, the space was out wide with the fullbacks for City. This time, Ederson's pass is wayward, but you can see how much space Walker would have had it come through. And in open play, City had some brand new tactics, but Liverpool were solid in defence. Usually when City build up, it's with the back three, and Kyle Walker effectively plays as the right centre-back. But today, Pep was effectively using traditional fullbacks, with both Walker and Cancelo remaining higher and wider. And this was facilitated partly by Bernardo Silva, who would be willing to drop in to create a back three so that the back two wouldn't be overwhelmed in the build-up. As if Bernardo had been high, there would be a 3 versus the City 2 centre-backs. Bernardo dropping deep was something we saw a lot of from City, so that often they were still building up with a back 3, but usually it would be Walker tucking in. But now with Bernardo deep, both fullbacks could advance high, something we've rarely seen in the Pep era. So much like for Liverpool, the space would be out wide for City, as Bernardo could look for Cancelo or Walker, and although Henderson and Thiago are fairly disciplined and could look to go out wide, to do this for 90 minutes is a tough task. But the problem for City in these situations is that De Bruyne was not tasked with dropping into the midfield, so Rodri could become overwhelmed in this region, so soon Pep switched to a more traditional double pivot, while still keeping his fullbacks high. But Liverpool's defensive shape should also be commended. Salah, Diaz and Firmino would all defend narrowly, whilst Thiago and Henderson would join in the press so that it was almost impossible to find this double pivot. As a result, City couldn't really play through the centre and had to go look for space in the wide regions on either side. So again, you can see Pep playing with traditional fullbacks, but what is very impressive here is Liverpool's defensive structure, with the front five being narrow and preventing entry into the City double pivots. As a result, the only space is wide, so City could barely play through the centre throughout the 90. And it should be noted that the City pressing shape technically allows a 5 versus 4 if Ederson is not getting involved. As a result, we could often see Henderson or Thiago become the press trigger, allowing Liverpool to push up more aggressively and force City either backwards or into a longer pass. But this is not to say that this is a perfect defensive shape from Liverpool. The space is out wide and in the midfield region, so Grealish in particular would look to drop into this pocket behind the pressing Henderson and away from Trent. However, even for players as good as City, this is an incredibly tough pass to make, so as a result, that didn't often come to anything. What it would do, however, is leave Trent 2 versus 1 against Grealish and Cancelo. So, if he tucked in onto Grealish, would often see Ake find Cancelo with the pass. Trent would then have to cover across, and Grealish could make the run into the space for Cancelo to find, forcing the Liverpool defence to come across. And a lot of City's most productive play did come from these wider regions. Because the Liverpool front 5 were defending so narrow, it meant there could often be 2 versus 1s worked in the wide regions. And City did create chances from the wide regions. Down the left in particular, Bernardo would often come into a pseudo left centre-back position in order to lock up Salah and make it even more difficult for Trent to deal with these two men. And although Liverpool could come across, on a different day, City may have had more success in these regions. But Liverpool's defensive shape had its weaknesses. Again, we see Bernardo being extremely deep, helping the build-up, and we can see that Liverpool generally have an extremely narrow shape when defending. This isn't great for Trent, because now he's left in this deep situation and he's 2 versus 1 against City attackers. Overall, this was an interesting match that showed us a lot from both teams. From City's point of view, Haaland did have an off day, and more often than not, he'll be able to finish many of those chances, so City will be encouraged. Tactically speaking, both managers were excellent, and I would give Pep a 7 out of 10, and Klopp a slightly higher 8 out of 10, as his defensive structure was really solid. But what did you make of the match? Drop it down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.